The power of cropping is our topic today on Luminar Coffee Break. Let's see what we can accomplish in 15 minutes or less, starting now. Hello, everyone, and welcome. So our topic today is going to be on the power of cropping, and I'm going to use these beautiful kitten images because my Skylum teammates in our private Slack channel, they absolutely love kittens and cats, and they're always showing, you know, our kittens or our cats to each other. It's one of those things that you bond with your coworkers. So I thought that was kind of neat. And when I saw theirs, I remember that I did this photo shoot for a good friend of mine, Lisa. And these are her ragdoll kittens. Now, these look incredible. I love what I did with these. And I am going to humble myself by showing you the behind the scenes of what they really look like, because I didn't do a great job. And I don't want you to think that as photographers, keep in mind, you try to get it perfect in camera. You try to crop it, you try to frame it, you try to do all these things, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. And working with children and pets, they're too unpredictable. So I'm just going to show you some of the shots first, and then I'll show you how I did the cropping with it, all right? So here's an example. You know, when I first, and you're seeing everything from beginning to end. Yeah, I take a couple test shots just to make sure I have the proper exposure set. And then we brought the little kitten. This is Snow. We brought her into the scene. She's just so adorable. But here we are with her. And look at this. These are not winning images. They definitely don't look like these images, right? Well, those are the images I used. And what we had to do was shoot a little bit wide. In fact, very wide. And then you start, like this image here, for example. You know, shot very wide. And I photographed this with a 24 to a 200 millimeter lens. And I kept it at 40 because I had no idea where she's going to go. This is how I would crop this image. Let me get it to it right about there. There we go. So this is how I want to frame the image. You could say, well, Vanelli, you're a professional photographer. Why didn't you do that during the shoot? That cat was moving kitten was moving all over the place. And we're trying to get her to stay focused on what we were doing. Well, I shot wide on purpose so we have options. And not to mention the fact, if Lisa said, hey, I want these for an 8x10, boom, here we are. In fact, let's do it. I'll grab a crop. I'll convert that to an 8x10, which we know is a 4:7 ratio. All right? And then from here, let's say that's what she wanted. I'm going to crop it in. And let's give it a little more room. There we go. And here we have it. Now we have a good base. But what if she decided, well, I don't want 8x10s. I want them a little bit wider. And the proper ratio of the original image is a what? 8 by 12. So an 8x12 is the original size. And that's not a common print. But I started falling in love with 16x9s. So what if we did more of a panoramic type shot? And maybe something like this. All right? So do you see what I'm getting at is the first goal is shoot a little bit wide and understand, don't photograph what you see. Photograph what you imagine it to be. And then give yourself some wiggle room if you decide to change that. Now, here is where you still consider and you still stick with distractions. You get rid of all those distractions ahead of time. So let me go through some of these. Okay, right here, for example. Now, I have the handler, which is my goddaughter Erica, is in the background. She's the one who's coasting Snow out. I have Lisa behind me, wiggling some few things to get Snow's attention. Well, in this case here, this bark you're seeing right up in here, there was a lot of that stuff inside this little hole opening that we were shooting with. So I cleared all that stuff out ahead of time. And I got a decent looking set. Once we have the set, and notice right in here, I'm really not liking how, she's in shadow and she's getting just on the edge of the frame. So if we crop it right about here, there we go. Now I got rid of this highlights. In fact, let me just use a crop. I'm going to stick to the originals just for now, cropping. Now I could just click on Composition AI and look what it did for me. Using the rules of third, it helped me position the cat or the kitten where I want her to be, but I'm definitely going to bring it in a little bit more. In fact, a lot more. Here we go. Now that I have her in where I have it, that looks great. This I'll have to deal with either with Gen Erase or like we did in the past where I showed you how you just copy. In fact, we'll do it real quick. Duplicate. I'll copy a piece, I'll copy the background layer and then flip it. And actually, you know what? That's not going to work. Actually, you know what? If I do this, yep, that'll work. There we go, because I don't want the kitten in the way. And now brush, paint, and let's just expose this right here. There we go. We could do something along those lines there to where I just took a piece of the image that's already there and switch it. And that's what AI is doing. AI, when it's looking at the generative erase, it's looking at the scene thinking, well, what can I replace that little section with? It does it for us, all right? In this case here, I knew that if I just copied that background layer, do it the old school, flip it, now, doesn't that look totally different? That looks a lot different from the way I shot it. So let's do this. Look at this. Look at the difference. So when you see this, you're thinking, hey, that Millie's a good photographer. When you see this, you're saying, wow, I could have done that. He's not that good of a photographer. So don't get stuck or hung up on it has to be perfect. If it's not perfect, I'm not taking that picture. Now, if you're photographing for a wedding or something that requires a lot of images, you train your eye and you make sure you crop it in frame, because here I only knew I had maybe 15, 20 images to edit. That's easy. But if this were an entire photo shoot with hundreds of images, then I have to be very particular in making sure I get it done in camera so I don't have to edit as much afterwards. All right? So that's an example here. And let's go, and I'm going to come down here, crop. I'm going to use this one. So here's a good example. So here's the overall image itself. I did my edits to it. And once you have a choice. You could either crop first, which I did here, create all your edits, and then if you decide, well, you know what? In fact, let me duplicate this. Here we go. So then you could decide, okay, well, I cropped it already. Since it's non-destructive, I can come in here and say, oh, there's the actual edit or the actual crop. You know what? I want to get more of that basket, let's say. And again, you're using the rules of third. There's so many different ways you could come in here. The first way I did it, because I didn't want this little gap in the tree, but maybe you want that. Maybe you like that little gap to where it looks a little expanded. That's entirely up to you. But you still pay attention to, let's say, we'll go to, let me go to the original, this one. Look at this. Look up in here. All of that. Well, those are things that are peeking out in your frame. So when you're shooting, you keep your eye on the subject, but then look around the frame. And in this case here, yeah, that's distracting. But look how easy it is for me to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to get rid of that, especially with the edit that we just did. There, now I got rid of that. Now I can maneuver her Let's say I want her on this side or that side, or let's go back to what I mentioned earlier, where I'm falling in love with the 16:9 ratio. All right, well, what can we do with this? Maybe bring it in a little bit tighter. I'll get rid of that after. Actually, let's see if we can get rid of it now. Yeah, I can. No, we're gonna have to get rid of that in a moment. All right, right there. There we go. And boom. Let's see. Oh, there we have it. So, and I want to give her more headroom. So notice, like the headroom is not where it should be. There. Now her eyes are on this line. And here's that rule of third. Boom. So right here is a good spot. Each of these points. Here's the upper half. Here's the bottom half. There's the middle. Now, sometimes it's okay to put them in the middle. And I'll show you one example of that. For this image, I think this works much better. There we go. There. Now there's our 16:9. And I got rid of this distraction on the side. Now I'm going to move it over just a little bit more. There. Why did I move it over? It just felt weird. I just didn't like the way it looked. Now in this case here, I like what I'm doing, but let's say this section up in here, I don't like the way that looks. We either could use the traditional erase, that may work. If not, okay, it did work. I'll use Gen Erase, but in that case it worked. Does this bother you right here? That's up to you. I don't think this is going to work too good with a traditional erase, but let's try it. If that bothers you, oh, I actually did a really good job. Well, okay, you know what? I like it better without it. Look at that. So, before, after, look how that's distracting. That's a little distracting. And there we have it. And we're able to just take that one main image. We'll take this one right here. And crop. I'm going to put the original. There we go. Try it again. There's the original. Apply it. There. Now, here's a couple things to be careful about. So I gave you two options. One option is crop first, then start doing your edits. Another option is start with all your edits first, then start doing your cropping. When do you know to do the difference? Well, if you start adding textures, so watch in a case like this. Let's say, we'll go back to the image here. Let's say we started adding textures on this cropped image. So I'm going to show all, and let's just do one of Carly's. Next, well, I'll just do that for now. Fill it. There it is. Stretch it. There. I added a texture. Let's make it look more like a painting. Yeah, we'll use overlay. All right, that's good. Give it a little more depth. All right, let's just say we did this, and I'm going to brush out or erase some of it on the kitten, snow. All right, I'm just doing a crude one for now. There we have it. Now, watch this. When we go to crop, if I take this image and I do this to the image, look what happened. Because that right here, this layer, look what it did. Now I can go back in and tell it, hey, you know what? I know I told you to stretch it to that frame. Well, I really want you to stretch it to the entire frame. So that just gives you an example of sometimes when you start dealing with cropping first, you're kind of, sometimes you can be locked in. So orders of operation matter and just your style. I can't give you every example. That's something you just have to practice through experience. The other issue is if you apply Gen Erase, Gen Swap, or any of the generative tools, even HDR, that creates its own file, now that crop is baked in. Now you can't go back on that particular image. Now the crop is automatic. You have to go back to the original. So these are things that when you're sitting down, just experiment and see. Like I loved these shots here. What is that? 1685. Let's do this. Oh, here it is. This image here, I love it dead center. I love it looking straight ahead. It's framed beautiful. For this crop, it works. For this image here, oh, I wish I took this shot. I love this shot. My son took it. My son said, hey, have snow come walking down or appear to be walking down the tree. Now there's a person behind them, which you can't see, holding the kitten, and the cat just was not cooperating with me. My son jumped in. He said, let me try it. He grabbed it, and he just had a way of whispering with the kitten, and look what Snow did. So when people tell you, never, never, never put the subject of the image dead smack, don't use that word never. You know, there's always exceptions to the rules. And then this one here, this is what I was getting. You know, to where I try to get that stoic look with her. I like it, but you know what? I really, and the client really loved this image here. So, again, perspective. Take the wide shot. In fact, that was, where was one I just showed? This one right here was 2060. Let's see if I can find it. No, of course, I show up. Yeah, you know what? I'm not going to go through all these. So it's in here somewhere, 2060. Let's see if it's in here. And my other goddaughter ended up, I just realized both of I have several godchildren. I had two different godchildren doing these shoots with me because they love kittens. Let's see. Yep, here it is. It's come somewhere down here. There we go. Yeah, so this was in the studio. And nope, I can't find that one. But you get the gist of what I was getting at is sometimes, again, when you're doing these shoots, learn to shoot wide first. And then once you start feeling in that groove, then you take it a little bit further. All right? So I hope that helped you and gave you a little insight of how to work, not just with pets, but when you're cropping, your mindset. What is a good concept that you're trying to apply? All right? And by the way, if you're interested in hands-on learning, TNF camera, we're going to do our Civil War reenactment coming up. And let me pull that website for you. So here we are. Oh, that's our team. And here we have it right here. There we are. All right. So the Civil War reenactment, myself, Rick Freeman and Rick Farrow, along with Bart Feldman, we will be working with a group of people. I think it's limited to like 40 people. And we're doing the historic site. In fact, let me get out of the way for a moment. There we go. He's going to let everyone shoot with these plate glass, the old-fashioned cameras. And that's going to be really cool. So that's coming up in October, right here, October 16th, 17th, and 18th. It's going to be in Vineland, New Jersey. If you want to attend, again, here is the QR code. Just click on that. You could register for the workshop. If you're not able to make it, we're doing something really cool at Skylum. It's the after workshop webinars, to where we'll take the instructors that were at these events, and then we're going to just recap what we taught. Now, obviously, you're going to learn more when you're there with the hands-on, but for those of you that can't travel that distance, this is just one more way Skylum is committed to making sure our education is on point. All right? Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. And now, if you're here, please stick around for the Ask Me Anything segment. For everyone else, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you at the next coffee break.